Hello, and welcome to an extremely belated episode of We Only Look Thin. I am Katherine Weigel. I am one of your hosts. I am a tiny habit coach. I've lost about 140 pounds. I live in California. I'm a pretty cool gal.
Yeah.
And with me today is...
Donald Weigel, and I am none of those things. But I have lost about 100 pounds, and I guess I am one of your hosts.
Yeah.
And I'm here to talk about it, and I do live in California. I am not a pretty cool gal, though.
No, but you're a pretty cool guy.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Welcome. And as Catherine mentioned, this is a much belated episode.
Yeah, at the end of all of our episodes, we're all like, hey, send us an email, you guys. We'll totally do an episode about it. And we are going to respond to a listener email from the very merry month of May of 2021. Maybe her problem has already been solved.
Yeah.
Maybe we delayed it so that she would come up with her own solutions.
Yes, that's what we did.
No, it's, we do our very best. And so we are going to respond to a listener question. Hopefully it will resonate with other people too. I don't know if she's already solved the problem, but here we are and we're going to answer it.
Well, I think ultimately anybody who has a significant other can relate to this on one level or another.
Yeah, or if you are a significant other. Anybody who knows somebody
If
will
you
get
are
something.
a significant other, then you have a significant other, I think.
No, but whatever side of the aisle you're on is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that spouse math, but yes, I'm pretty sure that works. Like if A equals B, then B equals A. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, we are going to finally answer a question from listener Teresa.
Hello, Teresa, and welcome to We Only Look Thin. So Teresa wrote us a very difficult question last May, and it is one of those sorts of questions that may not have a 100% ironclad answer, but we both felt like it was important to talk about it and talk about the circumstances surrounding it and try our best to come up with some suggestions for it. So here we go. Teresa writes in and talks about how she found us on a group for MyFitnessPal. Hello, group for MyFitnessPal. Thank you so much for listening. And Teresa gained 20 pounds in the early parts of the pandemic and then managed to take it off.
Must be nice.
Must be nice indeed. But here's her question, her actual question. My husband is overweight. He wants to lose 150 pounds magically without changing his food choices or his purposeful movement. I have definitely been there. And he's not motivated to lose weight. He is constantly asking to eat out at least 3 times a week and not at places where I can get a decent low-calorie meal. Places like Beef O'Brady's, Cracker Barrel, Pizza, or BurgerFi. When my 11-year-old daughter and I go out...
Who's maybe like 13, 20 now. We don't know how old she is now. It's been a while.
I think she just graduated college, something like that. When my 11-year-old daughter and I go out for an after-dinner walk, he gets annoyed that we are going for a walk instead of sitting on the couch. He doesn't want to walk. He doesn't like to walk. I know he needs to start when he's ready. Side note, he already has diabetes, takes shots, and high blood pressure. Meanwhile, I'm finding it hard to stay on my path when he's on a different ... cruise. I'd love to hear your advice.
So this is a really big issue.
Yeah.
And I think, like Donald said, I don't know that we have one answer, but we sure do have a lot of experience with being people who had the opportunity to lose 150 pounds.
Yeah, usually people write in and they're like, I don't like to go outside when it's cold, and we're like, rebounder.
Yeah, it's like, and the episode writes itself.
Exactly. But this is a deep issue which has to do with boundaries and relationships and marriage, and there isn't a simple solution to this, but I think that we can go about it from a place of, where Catherine and I are and were and, our past experience.
Yeah. So I think to start, and it's hard to know, we have 12 ways we'd like to start with this, but I think the first is just from our experience. I remember being young and overweight and having family members say, hey, I'll pay for you to do Weight Watchers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, hey, I'll pay for your gym membership.
Right.
And feeling nothing but shame and embarrassment and judgment. Like every time I was going to see the person, they would judge what I was eating, and it felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And even into adulthood, I had family members who I think saw me as a project and not a person. Every time I would talk to them, they would say, hey, you should have a smoothie, or you should do it this way, or I go to the gym 2 hours a day. And I just felt, it took me a while to figure it out, but I felt like I was just a project to them. And I still see people, they say, don't start a relationship if you're like, ooh, well, when we're together, I'm going to get them to change the kind of shoes they wear and their haircut and their style.
Yeah.
And going in wanting to change someone is a really dangerous way to go about having a relationship. And Teresa, we're not saying that you're doing this, but when we see someone else as something to solve or fix, it can really hurt the dynamic of the relationship. And Donald and I were codependent for so many years that we just sort of like, when Donald was trying to be fit, I would just feel kind of jealous and must be nice. And I would try to sabotage him. And
I did the same thing to Catherine. I didn't, there were definitely time periods where I didn't want to worry about counting any calories or worrying about what I was eating, and I just wanted to have takeout all the time and sit on the couch and binge TV. And so, Catherine would be on a plan, or it would be the reverse, and I would, quote unquote, want to get my act together and feel motivated. And Catherine would say like, hey, how about we get takeout? And it was almost virtually impossible for me to refuse when that came up, because like I didn't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, and so we spent so many years. I mean, we've been married how many years? 20,
almost 24.
Almost 24 years. I don't know. I just lost count after
Catherine
20.
doesn't remember how old she is or how long we've been married.
It's fine. It's been a long time. But the thing that we used to do was just enable one another's bad behaviors. Or again, we just did an episode on identity. We identified as people who like to sit on the couch and like to go out and who like to, indulge. And I also saw myself as someone who couldn't do things independently of Donald. We had to like the same things. We had to like the same movies, and we had to move in unison.
Well, and I think there's even sort of a societal pressure around having the same dinner all the time.
Yeah.
And cooking for one another.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, we eat completely separate meals now and sort of just take care of our own food. But I think that, getting over that idea that in a marriage you're supposed to, do everything together and eat the same stuff and be on the same page all the time was something that was really hard to kind of get past.
Yeah. And I think the first thing, and again, we're hoping to appeal to many listeners in the audience, is finally understanding that it was not okay for me to try to pull Donald down. It was not okay for me to be annoyed that he wanted to work out and I wanted to sit on the couch. That is not a healthy relationship. But it's something that we cultivated over the course of 20 years of being together, of just like, well, this isn't going to last. Well, I can convince him to go back to old habits, because we didn't identify as healthy, active people. We just identified as people who are maybe trying to lose weight, or it's not fair, or boy, it must be nice that he has the motivation and I don't. And it wasn't okay for us to treat each other like that, but we just didn't know any better.
Yeah. And, it was sort of a weird, series of events that led to us finally getting on the same page. And, for years, I've mentioned many times on this podcast, I lost over 50 pounds a couple of times and didn't keep it off. But there were definitely times when I was, on a, quote unquote health and fitness kick and Catherine was not, and vice versa. But, we finally got to a point where we were on the same page, but it was possibly a really unusual series of events.
Yeah. So on this last time journey, and we've talked about it before, I spent 20 years zigzagging, going on diets, going off diets. And at age 41, if we go back and listen to the, first episodes of We Only Look Thin, I talk about how in January of 2016, I was going to the office and I was wearing a pair of pants that I thought were going to rip at the seams.
Yeah.
So I wore this long sweater to cover myself in case my pants ripped at work because I literally had nothing else to wear. And I remember sitting in my car and thinking, I need to change my life. I am killing myself. And I remember making a conscious decision to say, I don't care what Donald does. I am separating myself from all of his actions. I need to do this for me. And no amount of other people wanting me to try something, buying me plans, trying to get me on a kick, none of that was going to get me to change my life until I was ready to do it. And I had to separate my actions from Donald's. And I remember telling him, hey, I feel really terrible and I am going to start tracking calories again and wearing my Fitbit. And Donald wanted nothing to do with it.
Oh, yeah. No, that sounded awful.
Yeah, but you actually said something like, this is the way I am and I'm just going to enjoy myself and forget it.
Yeah. I had gotten to a point where I had just decided I didn't care anymore and I wasn't going to do anything. And I was just going to, just go up the scale and up and whatever happened.
Yeah. And so, we understand that friction that comes from having different priorities and different desires. So we totally empathize with it, but it might be an opportunity to own your own choices and sit with the discomfort of not having the same priorities. I mean, Donald loves going to Comic-Con and loves, the comic book scene.
Indeed.
Man. And I don't. And for a few years, I tried going to Comic-Con with him and I just wasn't into it. And then I just decided I'm not going to Comic-Con. He's going to do his thing and I'm going to do my thing. He enjoys it and hooray for him.
Yeah.
And it's healthy for me to do what I want to do. And it might be an opportunity to go, you know what? I can empower myself to just do what I want to do. And just because we don't eat the same food or we don't take the same walks or we don't have the same interests doesn't mean that we still can't connect.
And then, I got a diabetes diagnosis and I know she says her husband already has it. For me, my doctor looked me in the eye, and I apologize for anyone who's heard the story 100 times on this show, but my doctor looked me in the eye and said, you are going to go blind or lose a limb, as part of complications from diabetes. And for me, those two possibilities were so horrifying that they were incredibly sobering. And it wasn't exactly an epiphany, but it certainly was, almost that kind of lightning bolt that you hear about that forced my hand to go down the right path. And thankfully, Catherine was already, filling her head with voices from other people and learning things from other podcasts and other books and really getting advice, and then was able to give that advice to me.
Yeah, in a third person, though. Advice from me about doing something was aggressive. But for me, being able to say, you know what, Heather on Half Size Me says ... It was much softer to give an example of someone else's advice than to give my own advice.
And it really, for me, it really softened the blow. It was not like my spouse telling me what to do. It was more like I was hearing it from somebody else, and I was taking that other person's advice.
Yeah.
Because I think that, as human beings, and I don't know why this is, but Catherine has brought up before, Gretchen Rubin talks about how spouses make bad accountability buddies.
Yeah.
And, I think hearing it from a spouse, it feels sort of lectury sometimes for some reason. And I would really take it personally rather than taking it as the well-intentioned advice that it was.
Yeah. And, and that whole thing and Gretchen Rubin's thing is policing your spouse is not a good relationship.
Yeah.
Are you going to eat that? I thought you were on a diet. That judgment can be really critical. And so I think stepping back, the first thing we'll tell you, you've already forgotten the first thing we told you, so we can do it again, is really starting by asking the question, how can I support you? If your husband says, I want to lose weight, I want to lose 150 pounds, it might be an empty, like, I should lose 150 pounds, but without the actual intention of doing it.
Right.
So the question you might want to start with is, how can I support you? Do you need an advisor? Do you need to just get things off your chest? Do you just need to, share? Do you want a cheerleader? Really starting there, because I go in as the fixer. Oh, you have a problem? Here's 50 things you can do.
Right.
What kind of support do you actually need right now? Because sometimes it might just be, I need to figure this out for myself and I don't want any judgment. Because every time I got, are you going to eat that? It made me want to stop everything. It made me want to, just pull away and feel shame about it, which led to secret eating, which is a whole other thing.
And going back to what you were saying earlier, when you're in a position where you feel like you're just a project to somebody else, it doesn't feel good to like be looked at, or to even if the person doesn't mean it, even if they don't really feel like it, if you feel like you're a project rather than a person, it really would make me feel like they didn't actually care. Like, I worked out with a personal trainer and it felt like, I did it for a while and I was successful at losing weight and getting into shape, but I didn't feel like I was a person. I felt like I was, sort of a machine.
Yeah.
That was just, that I was a robot being programmed to act and eat in a certain way rather than actually being cared about. So I think that if your husband says, I need help, then asking how you best can help rather than just dumping a lot of advice on that person is the way to get started.
Yeah. And we're not saying that you're dumping advice, but I think that like, for me, even now when people come to Wolt or, send us an email and say like, how do I get started? I just want to fix everything and come up with the things that worked for me. But each person responds differently to advice and suggestions and cheerleading. But I think part of the journey that we have taken, joint venture, you can edit that out and post.
You can say journey if you want. I prefer adventure.
Yeah. But something that has really helped is understanding Donald and better understanding myself through things like the 5 love languages. How do I feel loved and appreciated? You can take the love languages test and understand how your husband feels valued. Is he looking for quality time, which might be sitting on the couch for him? Does he like words of affirmation? Wow, I really love you. You're amazing just as you are.
Yeah.
Like, really understanding what the other person needs and understanding how you feel loved matters. Donald also mentioned, as we were taking notes, the 4 Tendencies quiz by Gretchen Rubin. Understanding that Donald is a questioner. He likes data. The data is your leg is going to fall off.
Yeah.
Aye, Captain.
Well, and also as a questioner, taking an online quiz is a really good thing too. Not that you necessarily have to get your spouse to take online quizzes, but if they're willing to do it, then great. You can really gain some insight into, the love language or to, the way that they like accountability. But you can also, and you have to be careful with this, you can also kind of take the quiz on their behalf and sort of make yourself understand a little better what they might respond to.
Yeah, because the better I've understood myself and Donald and what his motivations are, Donald likes a lot of data and asks a lot of questions. And I used to feel like he didn't trust me. He's like, why is he asking all these questions? Just do it.
Right.
But for him, gaining clarity mattered to him. Whereas for me, it's just, okay, just get it out, get it done, whatever. But it's not a personality flaw. It's the way he processes. And it was really important to understand that. And again, going back to the love languages, if that quality time matters, your husband, for sitting on the couch, that might be where he is right now. He feels like that quality time of watching TV or relaxing is a way to connect. And when you and your daughter go out for a walk, he might feel excluded. And more importantly, it might seem like too big of a task for him. That whole, and this was another point we were going to bring up, meeting him where he is. How long of a walk are you going for? Is it a half-hour walk? Is it maybe beyond his physical limitations right now, and he doesn't want to go on a walk because he feels like his feet are going to hurt, his hips hurt, he's going to be out of breath. Is the walk too long? Maybe a 5-minute walk, maybe a little like to the end of the cul-de-sac and back, or to the red mailbox and back. Maybe that is a more accessible walk for him than whatever amount you're doing right now.
Yeah, maybe part of the reason he hates to walk could be that he feels shame because he can't keep up with you and your daughter, or because he gets out of breath, or because he feels all of this pain. So, I'm repeating what Catherine said, but it is really important to meet him where he is. I think that a lot of times we have a tendency, and I'll see it when I'm watching, I don't know, reality TV shows or something. There's somebody who just can't keep up with everyone else, and everyone looks upon that person like they're flawed, like there's something wrong with them. But there's always going to be somebody who is athletically more advanced than you are, and realizing that you need to meet that person where they are. And maybe in the end, walking isn't the answer. Maybe you try and come up with another activity that he will actually like and engage in. Maybe, you play foil ball in the living room or something.
Which is okay. So I made something in a foil packet for our daughter. It wasn't, gooey or anything like that, but she took all the tin foil and made it into a ball. And then and she doesn't like walking, by the way. She is sedentary. Yeah. But suddenly it was like, hey, let's throw the ball to me and keep it from Papa or whatever. And then we started playing probably for 20 minutes. Like we tried to dunk the foil ball in, a pot, and then in a candle, and then in a whatever, not a lit candle. But for 20 minutes, we were sitting, but we were actively participating in a seated activity, and we kind of tricked our daughter.
Yeah, we were getting like secret activity. And, it could be maybe your husband, it has enjoyed ping pong in the past, or foosball, or something like even, a sport like basketball or something, or frisbee in the park or something, or just tossing a ball around in the park. Like maybe there's something that he would want to do with the three of you that wouldn't be overtly like, hey, we need to go get some exercise right now. But it's, suggest like, hey, for together time, maybe we could do this thing, that he enjoys.
Yeah. And the other part of this is the idea of compromise instead of my way or the highway. If you like to go on a walk every night, maybe do every other night. Like, hey, sweetie, I get that walking isn't big for you, but I know that quality time on the couch is big. How about, every other day, our daughter and I go on a walk, and then the other days we'll do something together. We'll play Uno. Like, we'll sit on the couch and, play tiddlywinks or whatever it is. Like, yeah. Being able to compromise on what your goals are, and then maybe switching up and doing, like, on the weekend with your daughter, maybe doing a longer walk independently, or doing that thing of like, hey, we're going to walk to Rite Aid. Do you want to come with us? And do something super small. Start actively parking farther away to get in more steps at the grocery store or something like that. It doesn't have to be this big sweeping, like, well, this is what we're going to do and you're in the cold. Be able to compromise and meet him where he is so that he feels included, and not just like, well, my family's living a life without me.
And likewise, you can do a similar thing with the eating out.
Yeah.
Suggest that maybe he picks the restaurant the first time. Start simple. Like, don't try and cut out the eating out altogether, maybe, but start out with like, well, maybe he picks the restaurant the first time, and then you pick it the next time, and then you pick something that is, super calorie friendly for you, that allows you, so you both kind of win in that situation, and then you can go back and forth. And then maybe over time, you gently like suggest you eat out fewer times a week and still alternate, so that it's not a big sweeping, like, we're not going to eat out anymore change.
Well, and two, being able to go to a restaurant that might not fit your calorie goals can be something like, if you're going to the burger place, get the burger patty without the bun or without the cheese and with a side salad, and adjust your expectation of the dinner to meet your caloric needs. Because, we go out for pizza, but we go to Pizza Rev or Blaze Pizza, where you can order your own personal pan pizza. And so I budget for 700 calories for my own pizza. And it makes it a lot easier than, I mean, like Donald and I used to each get a large pizza and finish it and then wash it down with Ben
and an appetizer, the breadsticks and a giant soda, like the whole thing. Yeah. And we've managed to, fit pizza into our life without it being, going over our calorie deficit.
Yeah. So switching up where you get the pizza from can be a thing. And also that compromise of, hey, we're going to make pizza at home. Like I found a cool recipe, or we're going to make our own using tortillas. That's what they're called.
Yes.
Tortillas.
Yes, tortillas.
Tortillas. But, being able to switch it up so you're still modifying, but still getting what you want matters. And also, like, what is the purpose of going out to eat? Is that he just wants the indulgent food? Do you want to not cook at home because the kitchen gets too hot? Do you not want to do dishes? There can be lots of reasons for wanting to go out, and you can still kind of hit your goals. Now, Cracker Barrel, we had a bad experience at Cracker Barrel recently, so I apologize.
They're no longer a sponsor of this show now.
Oh, no. But it turns out Cracker Barrel doesn't really have any vegetarian options. And I made Donald go there.
A little rough for me, but that's okay. We learned a valuable lesson, and it made us closer together.
It sure did.
And then another thing, I didn't read this part, but earlier in the email, Teresa mentioned that she had listened to Atomic Habits, listened to the audiobook twice. And, we had talked about earlier in this episode about getting other voices into your head. And I think that one thing you could do, and I don't know if just a suggestion would work, or, how you make this work without, if your husband is a rebel, for example, and you tell him, well, why don't you listen to this audiobook? He might just then, never listen to it. But if he's already listening to audio, podcasts and things, you suggest he listens to a book like Atomic Habits or Tiny Habits, or even, early episodes of, to plug ourselves, early episodes of our show, or, maybe the Getting Started episodes where I talk about my diabetes, which is in a lot of episodes, but I really go in depth very early. Or maybe one of our Getting Started episodes, which are like 68, 69, 70, things like that. Or even just do the thing that Catherine did, where you say like, hey, I was listening to this audiobook and, the author said blank, or I was listening to this episode of We Only Look Thin, and, the husband had diabetes and he lost 100 pounds and he ate about 2,000 calories a week. Like, maybe, you could try something like that.
Yeah. And I think too, what I actually try to do instead of the suggesting listening, an alternative might be to listen to it while you're doing dishes.
Yeah.
Or while you're cooking.
There you go.
And just, if your husband's in the other room, just kind of hearing things and is a good way to not directly suggest something, but just kind of build it in. There are times when our daughter will say something like, doesn't Gretchen Rubin tell you to do whatever?
Right.
Because she just hears it because I'm listening to it and I'm not making her listen to it. So it kind of just seeps into the psyche because it's something that I'm doing.
Well, and sometimes, Catherine and I will talk to each other. I know a daughter is not the same as a spouse, but I know, Catherine and I will talk to each other about things, and then our daughter will chime in with her opinion about things.
Yeah.
And so, maybe you're having a conversation with your daughter where you're creating an environment for her where, she's learning good habits at a young age, or maybe it's just, a conversation with your friend that you're doing, or a family member that you're doing within earshot of your husband, and maybe he takes it in, maybe it, then he gets involved in the conversation. Stranger things have happened. So that's another way to try and, get the information in there.
Well, and I think too with our daughter, and we're very fortunate that she is a moderator and stops eating when she's full. But something that I try to do is compliment her on like, wow, I'm really glad that you stopped eating when you were full. Like, I'm working on that myself because she sort of has an innate ability to moderate where I don't. So complimenting her on the things that she's doing right is a good way to, again, build that foundation of healthy habits. Or, and even with the evening walks, it feels really good to move my body after dinner, being able to sort of identify why it's important. You're not personally attacking your husband. It's like, hey, this helps with digestion. And we love like seeing the neighborhood and watching the sunset and looking at the flowers blooming and that kind of thing, like changing the dynamic of what things are about. But, it's a really difficult, I'm sort of going back to the beginning. It's really difficult to not want to help the people around you be the version of themselves that that they can be. But in the end, it's not our job to fix anyone. It's not our job to, police what other people are doing. But in the end, we're not working on losing 50 pounds. We're working on creating a lifestyle together. I'm very grateful that Donald's, I don't know what would have happened if Donald just kept not doing, healthy habits. Yeah. So, I only had to manage that for 3 months. But I think something that we're focusing on is creating a lifestyle for ourselves and thinking about our actual future.
You only had to manage it for 3 months, except for the
40 years.
20 plus years before that, where I was sabotaging you all the time. But along the lines of what Catherine was just saying, you don't have to frame it around losing weight or around health or fitness, but daydreaming together could be a really good way to spark an interest in that. Talk about the travel plans that you might have for the future, or just, seeing your daughter graduate, seeing your daughter have grandkids, if that's something that you want to do, being able to run around and be there for your grandkids. Daydream along those lines. That could be a good way to spark an idea like, what, if I want to be there and I want to be able to do that, I might need to get into better shape.
Well, and two, the idea of going to Disney World or Disneyland or something.
Yeah.
We watch a Disney food blog, which isn't actually about food so much as just sort of tips for Disney World, which we love. But one of the tips that she often gives is, you're going to walk 20,000 steps a day at Disney World. Don't wait until you get to Disney World to walk 20,000 steps. Get good shoes in advance. Start going on walks so that you get used to those higher step counts. Having some goal like that of, wow, we really want to go on vacation. It's going to be a lot of walking. Hey, maybe we can start doing, a 5-minute walk after dinner together so that it gets us ready for the big trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
maybe your thing is, it could be traveling and walking anywhere. It doesn't have to be Disney, although I don't know why you'd go somewhere else.
Yeah, there's no reason. But when I started doing this, my first goal was just to walk our daughter to school.
Yeah.
It was a 1/4 mile. And I remember telling Donald, he's like, oh, well, I got to join a gym, or I got to, work out at whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why don't we just walk Bridget to school? And he said,
I said, no way. That sounds terrible.
What's that going to do?
Yeah, what's that going to do? Sorry, I couldn't remember what I said.
It's fine. But I was like, let's just start with that and see
I knew
what
I
happens.
said something awful.
But, it's those small steps that, what is it going to do? Well, who knows? But at least we're getting some fresh air. Really, the benefit of the walk, and here's another angle. The benefit of the walk is getting time with our daughter where we're not in front of a television and not distracted by devices, to just kind of check in and talk and have a conversation. It actually was really meaningful to us to have that, bit of time with our daughter that wasn't in a car. And that was building the relationship. There are so many people in our lives who don't have the same mobility that we have, whether it's my 97-year-old grandmother or a baby toddler. I hang out with baby toddlers who don't have the same mobility, who don't have the same food choices. Donald is vegetarian and I am not vegetarian. We co-eat together.
We eat at the same time, but not the same food.
But not the same foods. And he does different activities than I do, but we share a common desire for health, which is, super important to us. But we try to meet other people where they are. We, have friends again with different athletic abilities, and we try to match our activities to their level instead of like, come on, keep up. Like, come on, grandma who's 97, lift those heels up or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we open this by saying that there are some questions that don't have simple, easy answers. And ultimately, your husband may not ever get on board with this. And he, he may just never find himself in a spot where he is ready to do it and wants to learn how. But it is important for you to walk your own path in this. Even though you're married, even though you have the kid together, you need to keep and continue to set a good example, because your health is important and you know it's important. And taking care of yourself is one of the best things you can do for your husband and your kid.
Yeah. And I think too, especially with kids, is, they're going to make their own path. And it's important, I think, too, for them to see that parents might not do the same thing.
Yeah.
And might have different priorities. And it gives her an opportunity to sort of decide what is right for her, and finding balance there, and knowing that, she has choices about the kind of person that she wants to be when she grows up. And she can, find inspiration from you and leading by example, but also knowing that it's okay to have different priorities for people. Because like Donald said, the getting on board thing, it's not our job to make other people comply to what we want to do. We can lead by example, and it's tough, but finding that support network for yourself too. We did an episode called Party of One, I think, which was about sort of what if the people around you aren't supporting your health goals? What can you do? How can you expand your world to feel supported enough to manage your own goals, whether that's joining a weight loss support group, whether that's joining a running club, or, finding a group of like-minded people on the internet or whatever who can be there and be that support for you if your husband can't be that support for you. Donald and I have, different interests, and it's important for us to have our own worlds that we live in, and then meet up in the middle where we can with shared interests. So hopefully this episode has helped. It is a really complicated issue.
Yeah.
I want what is best for Donald. I want what is best for myself. But that, preaching has never worked. Projects have never worked. Shared visions have been ways that we can meet in the middle and support one another. So we wish you the very best as you navigate this, and let us know if you're still a listener to We Only Look Thin. Let us know. And if any other listeners have had this issue or have experiences that might shed some light, please do send us an email and let us know how it goes.
Yes, indeed. And I wish the best for you, dear, and well said. Thank you so much for listening, everyone out there. We genuinely are grateful for you. And you can listen to all our episodes wherever you found this one, or at any time at weonlylookthin.com.
Yep. And if you are at weonlylookthin.com, you can click on the link for Join Our Support Group, where you can find out more about Wolt Place, We Only Look Thin Place, the Facebook-based accountability group for women. It is not a weight loss plan, but it is a safe space to get support and accountability from other women on weight loss journeys. We have people doing Noom, Weight Watchers, counting calories, intuitive eating, all of that in the group. There's no one right way to be, but we do offer support when maybe you can't get as much support at home. So check us out. We have 2 subscription options, a monthly subscription with a 3-day complimentary trial, and a 3-month subscription with a 7-day complimentary trial to see if Wolt Place is right for you.
Yes, indeed. The one right way to be is who you are.
Yep.
Thank you for that. And also, you can interact with us through social media at We Only Look Thin on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Or if you'd like to send us an email so that 10 months later we can do an episode based on your question, you can reach out to us at weonlylookthin@gmail.com, and we will eventually get back to you.
We will. And if you would like to share some love with us, if you could head over to Apple Podcast and leave us a rating and a review, it boosts our mood. It lets us know that what we're doing matters. And it also helps other people looking for inspirational podcasts to find us. It boosts our visibility and it shows up in Apple. So please head over there.
It sure does. And if you don't feel like doing any of those things, if you could tell someone about the show, we would be grateful. Word of mouth is one of the best ways for information about the show to get out, for people to find us. If you know somebody who might enjoy it, say the word.
So if you're still haunted by the simple question of, how can I best support you? Just remember that Donald and I are an inspiration.
The information that you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The hosts are not medical professionals. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.